So, Tash, congratulations on becoming an Honorary Doctor of Letters at the University of Warwick. How does it feel?
So it's very exciting, sort of a huge honour, obviously. But it feels quite meaningful. It feels as if I guess the things that I've done have been noticed, and that I guess everyone wants that.
So you were born in Taiwan,
Yeah,
and raised in Malaysia, speaking multiple languages.
Yeah.
And you moved to the UK to study, including at Warwick.
yeah.
Which cultures and experience do you think influence your writing the most?
I identify as Malaysian. That's where I grew up. That's where I spent really most of my life, almost all my life, until the age of 18. Obviously, my Chinese heritage is very important to me. Culturally, I'm a huge mixture of Chinese, Malaysian, and now other things as well. But the country that shapes my imagination is Malaysia. The other parts of me allow me to see things in different ways, and I'm very attached to those other parts of me. But really, I think at my core, my work is about what it means to be Malaysian. And in a funny way, I think in the modern world, when everyone around the world is starting to question notions of identity and nationality and belonging, what it means to be, say, an immigrant in America, what it means to be British, even really homogenous countries like France or Thailand are starting to question what it means to belong to that country. I think actually Malaysia serves as a very good example because it's a very multicultural country, and we've been dealing with notions of belonging for many, many years.
Do you think then, in this current climate of, say, Donald Trump and Brexit, and troubled notions maybe of identity, that Malaysian literature and ideas maybe has a place that should be even more prominent because there is such a mixture coming from the country?
No, absolutely. And I think our particular vantage point gives us a great insight into what's going on in the rest of the world. I think we understand it instinctively much better than other people who might not have had that multicultural upbringing sort of stitched into their cultural DNA. And that's why I think a lot of us do look on what's going on in the world with slight dismay, because we know how fragile the relationship is between people who belong to different ethnic and religious and cultural backgrounds, and we know that actually it doesn't take a lot to upset that harmony. And I think we do have a very strong response to what's going on in the world.
Mm-hmm. So your first novel, The Harmony Silk Factory, is set in the Kinta Valley in Malaysia, where I understand your grandparents lived?
Yes, my uncle, my mother's family still lives there.
And much of your writing takes place in the past. Why do you think memory and recreating the past, both of your own family and of others, is so important in literature and even in life?
Well, I mean, the obvious thing is that it helps you interpret the present and figure out where you're going on from here. I mean, my first two novels were, I guess, what one might call historical novels. One took place in essentially the 40s, the other one in the 60s. My third novel is a contemporary novel. The one I'm working on now is a contemporary novel. And in a way, they all belong to the same narrative. There's a sense in which in Asia, we want the narrative about ourselves to be completely modern. We want it to be representative of the present and the future. We don't really want to sort of deal with the past because that's messy. It's a colonial past. It's a slightly troubled heritage that we've taken upon ourselves. But I think that they help us figure out all the kind of the nonsense that we see now, the ideas of, for example, national boundaries, what constitutes being Malaysian or being Singaporean. I think all those things are dependent on a clearer understanding of the past. And so all my novels, whether historical or contemporary, are part of the same narrative of figuring out where we come from and where we're headed.
And you alluded to the novel that you're working on at the moment. Can I trouble you for any details or even any spoilers?
No, it's set in contemporary Malaysia. It's set in a part of the country that's very close to Kuala Lumpur, the capital, but is culturally and economically and socially very divided from the capital, and it again is part of my my concern with how the country sees itself, how modern Asia sees itself, and the narratives that we're constructing for ourselves all over the world.
So the literary world is looking increasingly to Asia. For example, lots of people this year are talking about Pachinko by Min Jin Lee. Why do you think this is?
Well, I think for precisely the same reasons. I reviewed that book for The Guardian, and I thought very, very highly of that book because it was, on the face of it, a story that really no one knows about, and I presumably no one really cared about before that. A story of ethnic Koreans in Japan, which might seem like a really marginal story, if you look at it in global terms, but in fact, the themes that underlie that story are so powerful. The story of a group of people who physically, are perhaps not so distinguishable from the people around them, and yet feel like complete outsiders, and have to strive and make so many sacrifices in order to be accepted as any other person would be. And I think that is a story that resonates very powerfully across the world, even though it's very specific to one particular culture.
So you studied here at Warwick. What are your best memories of being here at the university?
A sense of sort of intellectual freedom and a sense of possibility. I came from Malaysia where we had a certain, certainly people of my generation, had a certain expectation of what higher education meant for us. It was meant to guide us to very solidly professional jobs. People of my generation from Southeast Asia tended to come from families who were very, very modest, and whose parents really dreamt of having some kind of financial stability, but were never quite able to do that. And so what happens is that you then project those sort of ambitions onto the next generation. And so really studying law, which is what I did, was very much a culmination of personal and family ambitions. But certainly during my time here, I started to think about the world in a different way, and I think partly that was because I was so far from home, and that forced me certainly to think about things in a different way, to think about how people reacted to me and how I was reacting to the world in a completely different way, and that's really what I associate my time at Warwick with, a sense of discovery, a sense of curiosity, a sense of the world sort of opening up, and thinking that what had been laid down for me was not what it had to be, that nothing was inevitable.
So you later studied creative writing. Why do you think creative writing in itself is important, and also why should people study it?
Well, I don't think people have to study it. I think, and I also think, I'm dealing with the negatives of creative writing. I think there is a whole industry that's sprung up around it, and at its worst, it can be, it can feel very manufactured. It can feel as if it's something that exists purely to guide people towards the publishing industry. And I don't think that writing should necessarily just be about publishing. But at its best, I think creative writing is something that really encourages people to think about literature in ways that they might not necessarily have thought of before. It really sort of breaks down boundaries, and when you find yourself on a course, and particularly in a workshop situation with other people who come from very different backgrounds, who've come from other countries, other cultures, who have completely different literary tastes from your own, it's a real eye-opener. I mean, you're completely sort of pushed out of your comfort zone, and that's what really writing is about. It's about trying to be different, trying to be new, trying to sort of question everything that you think is important, and trying to invent things that are new and express things in a different way. and that's why I think people should consider doing it, certainly at some point in their lives. Not because I think it necessarily makes them a better writer. I think technically a lot of writing courses don't give you that set of hard skills. But what it does teach you to do is to read differently. And reading, I think, is really at the heart of good writing. And a lot of people who do creative writing courses might not necessarily go on to become celebrated novelists, but they nonetheless might end up doing something that is every bit as important, and perhaps more important than being a novelist or an essayist or a biographer, which is, they provide a bedrock, they form the bedrock of intelligent critics and readers. They might become journalists or literary journalists or work in publishing houses, and that exposure to a range of writing styles, a range of voices, I think is really important.
And can you share any words of wisdom for today's graduates?
For today's graduates, I think what I would say is that they worked incredibly hard to get to where they are, and it feels like a real accomplishment, and it is a real accomplishment. But I would say also that they should stay open to all the possibilities that lie ahead of them, and not to make any assumptions as to what they're going to end up doing in their lives. Because I think the most wonderful thing about academia is not just that it provides you with a set of technical skills, but it provides you with the ability to question what you know and how you're going to use that knowledge.
Tash, thank you very much.
Thank you.